I'm a Kern with the Florida Gators.
Okay.
I was just checking to see if you were listening.
From Bethlehem, Louisiana. Hold on a second.
Hey, guys! Hey! I'm having a press conference, okay? Thank you.
Momentum, excitement, energy. They say all this stuff and you know what they mean, but it doesn't describe what you mean. It's just sort of out there.
You got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
I was just worried about, listening to, all your guys' rap poison.
Welcome to Sideline Judgement. Here are your hosts, Sergio and Tyler.
Welcome to Sideline Judgement. My name is Sergio.
My name is Tyler.
And today, Tyler, we are talking all about the championship. The absolute domination that all too well put on the Bradenton Marauders to win his first ever SOTD Alumni Fantasy Football League. Let's give it up. Aplausos for Sergio.
Aplausos for Sergio is now no longer the only other member of this podcast who have not won the championship.
Yes, sir. Yes.
We are a podcast of champions.
We are. Oh, too soon. Too soon.
I don't know. I feel like it was appropriately timed.
RIP the Pac-12. Yes, that is. You heard that correctly. I did win our fantasy football league this year, 7-7 in the regular season, and I would like to.
That's how I won it my year. I was not dominant, and I just got hot. Look,
they don't ask how many games you win; they just ask if you won the last 4, and that is what I did. So, I'd like to thank the only ETN I acknowledge, Travis Etienne Jr. For putting on some work in the championship game, in addition to my guy Jerome Ford from Cleveland, who started the week off beautifully with a Thursday night game. I'd like to thank Puka Nacua for all of the things that he has done this season, the unsung hero. I'd like to thank Jalen Waddle for single-handedly winning my semifinal matchup. I'd like to thank Jamar Chase for single-handedly winning the last regular season game that I won in order to clinch the playoff spot. I'd like to thank Jordan Love for stepping up and doing his thing throughout the season when another person I'd like to thank, Justin Fields, was injured. I'd like to thank Jalen Warren for being the true RB1 in Pittsburgh. I'd like to thank George Kittle for coming in mid-season and coming in and joining. And above all, Tyler, I would like to thank myself because I had the assets and I cashed them in and I won the title. And from now on, Tyler, if you notice, there's a bunch of space right here, my friend.
Listeners, you can't see this. Behind Sergio, there is a perfectly set space for the trophy to go right there.
I may or may not have cleaned up my room on the 1st of January. Mostly because I like to start the year off clean mind, clean mindset, clean room. We're going to do a good job.
No. That's not what is important.
But it was mostly because I had to make room for the trophy that will soon be en route to South Florida. A true South Florida, might I add. Not one that has been...
Not whatever is in Tampa.
Whatever they call up there in Tampa with their bad Cuban food.
By the way, who was your starting quarterback for this championship game?
Justin Fields.
Justin Fields. Acquired in a trade with me.
For who, Tyler?
For Scary Terry.
And how'd that work out for you?
It was actually not bad. I had
actually good. Yeah.
Scary Terry was like before the Commanders broke Sam Howell.
Mm-hmm.
It was working really well. I was like, I actually had 3 really good wide receivers in Chris Godwin, Christian Kirk, and Scary Terry. Yeah. And then I can never trust Gabe Davis because he only seemed to go off in the weeks I didn't play him. And I just so I was pretty good. And then everybody on my team got injured.
Listen, it happens sometimes. I think the moment of the season for me was the 1-for-1 trade, Travis Etienne Jr., who I acquired in exchange for Cooper Kupp, who put in like for 3.5 years of work.
You consulted Cooper Kupp about where he wanted to go, and
I did.
You agreed to trade him to the right spot.
I did. You know what? And that's what happens when you go ahead and you honor players who have been with the franchise for so long and you respect them. Good things happen. Karma happens in the universe. Shout out to the Portland Trailblazers. Anyway,
it's just sad that Clyde Edwards-Helaire could not be there to see it.
You know what?
He was the original I have the assets player.
Yes, but I am glad that this championship was won on the backs of Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle, the OG draft your cornerstone wide receivers in the late round. Just an incredible job by me. I mean, my mom always says to be humble, but after 5 years of this fantasy league, and after that one season where I lost the semis by 0.04 of a point, and then when you looked at my scores, what would have been in the Natty, I would have dominated and would have won my first title then. But you know what? No, that's okay. That was in the second year of the league. Now in the fifth year.
Oh, the year I won.
Yeah. Yes, the year you won, Tyler. The year you won.
They
should have
don't
been a
ask how
sideline
many.
judgment.
They just ask if you won the last 4, which we can both say we did. All I can say is that I still dominate you in our rivalry. So
you
I'm
do
here right now.
You do, but you can't claim the rings argument anymore. Now we're here.
No, we're dead even on that
now
one.
We're here.
And you're saying you have the recency bias argument.
I do. I definitely do. But enough of that nonsense that we're talking about. Let's go ahead and dive
Real
in,
quick,
Tyler.
sorry, I have one more thing to say.
Uh-huh.
It is criminal that. So I was just like, okay, Lamar Jackson has been my quarterback the entire time we've been in this league, and basically I have to hope that I only win championships when Lamar has MVP years. That was the year I won it the first time, and the rest of my team just let him down.
Listen.
Like I got in the fantasy recap this week the overachiever award and the highest scoring quarterback award, which was just absolutely salt in the wound, like a spit in the face, like for the 11th place game.
Incredible.
Which I won.
So I was going to say, who's last in our league?
Max.
Oh, boy.
Shocking, truly.
So Max as punishment in our league has to wear a Florida State jersey now. Anyway, enough of that, Tyler. Let's talk about what actually happened on the real football field and not the one with the numbers and stats on our phones. Let's talk about the college football playoff semifinals. We had two bangers of games. Just incredible games. I can hear your argument for the first game, the Rose Bowl, in which Michigan ended up beating Alabama in overtime, 27-20. I can hear your argument by saying that game was sloppy, that game was a little disorganized, the offenses were inept, the defenses were playing much better than the offense, blah, blah, blah. But it was still a very exciting game, especially in the second half. We will get to the Washington victory over Texas in a minute, but I do want to start with the Rose Bowl, Tyler. What were your initial thoughts? What went through your head watching the game? What were your thoughts on the game overall?
Thoughts on the game. Defenses for both teams came to play. I think Michigan's defense was the real, the standout unit. They just took it to Alabama's offensive line. And it wasn't even actually they were overpowering them, but it wasn't even that. It was just that I will say the defenses were great. My second take is that neither of the QBs played exceptionally well. And JJ McCarthy in the end, in the second half of this game, really started to turn it on. And it's the constant thing of Michigan has not really asked JJ McCarthy to do that much. And when they finally did, he delivered. Now, it's one of those things. They're probably going to have to ask him to do that stuff again next week, and we'll see if he can continue to deliver. But it was one of those things where Michigan, for some reason, continues when they go to bowl games to go into their trick play bag for something when they don't need to. And that was the whole reason they lost to TCU.
We'll be talking about trick plays that you didn't need to run in the other game, but we'll get to that later on, Tyler.
But once they realized that they just had to line up and play football, they started to really push the issue. On Alabama's side, Jalen Milroe, this was not a good game for him. He had only 114 yards passing. On the ground as a power runner, he was doing what he could. But he took 6 sacks, 5 in the first half, which basically tells you all you need to know about Alabama offensively in the first half. Their best offensive series came from a muffed punt by Michigan, which is another story of the game, that Michigan special teams almost blew it for them multiple times in this game. But Milroe was unable to diagnose where the blitzes were coming from, and really this is a big thing to say, and I don't want to say that Milroe can't achieve this, but in this game he lost all the mental reps. From a physical perspective, Jalen Milroe dominant power runner. We've said it all season. He can run the ball, and he has a killer deep ball. He didn't get to access the deep ball in any way in this game. Part of that because Alabama's offensive line couldn't hold up against the defense, the style of defense that Michigan plays, and also Milroe, like I said, wasn't able to really diagnose where the pressure was coming from. One or two of the sacks I remember watching were just the open blitzer just has a straight shot to the quarterback. Milroe doesn't throw it hot, or doesn't get rid of it, or doesn't run out of it, and he gets sacked. And sacks, I think we talked about that a little bit this season as well. But I heard a lot of thing being like, I feel like the way that analytics and things are going is that sacks are going to start to become more important than turnovers to people. In a way that and the way that you diagnose what's important. Now, let me explain. Okay. Is it like, because there's a lot of randomness. Like, obviously, you want interceptions and fumbles more than you want a sack because you get the ball. Yeah. But I think what you should build your defense on is getting sacks, because sacks statistically are drive killers. Like, I
agree with that.
Very seldomly do you take a sack and then continue to get first downs in a drive. The great offenses can do it, but it's like, so I think it's like Michigan has built their defense around getting that. And because they don't really they don't really force turnovers as much, I think, as like a lot of times the great defenses we think about were so good at forcing turnovers. And there is an element of randomness to that. And the thing that Michigan did is they're just like, we're just gonna attack Jalen Milroe, and we're just going to get them on the ground. Michigan's defense was outstanding in this game. Alabama was able to start running on them a little bit in the second half, but I think the better team won.
I do think the better team won. I want to talk about that last comment you had where Michigan started running the ball in the second half. I agree with you. And it wasn't just the Michigan defensive line beating the Alabama offensive line. I think Michigan on both sides of the trenches, like, they won the trench battle. Full stop.
Yeah.
They dominated in the trenches. Wasn't even a question. And I think that that's something that, and for the sake of the bit, Tyler, we're not going to have the Nick Saban conversation today. We're going to push it to another side.
We were going to run a fake punt, but then we were lined up wrong, so we called a timeout. We're gonna take the 30 seconds to go.
Exactly.
That needs to be a full off-season talk.
It does, but briefly, I do think that part of the reason why Alabama looked so much better in the second half compared to the first half was because this was like, for me, yes, Michigan played the better game. They won the offensive line. They finally got over the proverbial monkey off their back, so to say, and made the championship game, blah, blah, blah. But that's not the real story of the game to me. I always look at things. I have been one to say that sports to me is one of the best storytelling mechanisms to talk about society, to talk about things that are happening. And I just think that in the grand scheme of who truly is the GOAT, right? It's pretty universal. Very rarely do you find someone that picks Bear Bryant over Nick Saban. But it's pretty.
There was a time where that was an argument, and I don't think that you can make that argument anymore.
I don't either. And I think it's games like this one that prove like, oh, no, Saban's operating on a different level. Alabama was bad in this game.
Yeah,
we mentioned the offensive line. We mentioned some of the turnover issues. We haven't talked about the center issues in terms of snaps multiple times in the game. The fact that Alabama, outside of Isaiah Bond,
no passing attack.
They don't really got a capital G guy. You know, they got some good players, Jermaine Burton.
But even then, Jermaine Burton and Isaiah Bond, as good as they are not Jalen Waddle. They're not Jerry Jeudy.
No,
they're not Devontae Smith.
Excuse me. That is SOTD Fantasy Football League champion Jalen Waddle. Please.
Gotcha. Understood.
His full title, if you will. Thank you very much.
But they don't have those players.
No, they don't. And they haven't had those players for a few years now. Outside of Bond, all that stuff. But I think that this game, the only reason that we're even having a conversation about, wow, look how this game went or whatever, is because Nick Saban put on a masterclass in the second half. He changed the defensive scheme completely. The defensive line of Alabama looked more like a defensive line that had guys like
Jonathan Allen.
Who's the guy on the Patriots that was drafted a couple years ago? Who's turning into a really good defender. Anyway, but they've always had these like big time interior defensive linemen. And they finally looked like that again. And they were able to stop the run. And that was the whole key. I was telling my friends when talking about who to take in this game, my 2 cents was, I think I'm gonna wait. I would wait to see the first couple of possessions. And if Michigan can run the ball on the Bama defense, the game is over. Just like if the Michigan defensive line can stop Alabama's run attack, the game is over. I thought that was going to be the deciding factor. And up until halftime, I was proven right. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what happened. Alabama stayed in the game by some miracle, a big play to start the game on their first drive. But then Michigan settled in and all of those things. But I really think that the reason this game went the way it was because Nick Saban made those defensive changes, was able to get those guys to start tackling. They looked like the defense that beat Georgia in the SC championship game again. Now, it's just that Michigan's guys, and this is going to be a crazy statement to say if you've watched college football for as long as Tyler and I have, but Michigan has the guys that we normally associate with an Alabama or a Georgia or a Clemson a few years ago. Well, you know what I mean?
It's like that thing Michigan is doing right now, and Washington, in another sense, is doing the same thing as well.
Yes,
they're doing right now what every person dreams about doing in their college football video game, in their NCAA 14 and their soon-to-be EA college football. This is what you dream: is you take the program and after over several years, you upgrade it, and you lead it to this level where. Yeah, Michigan's not the like, oh, wow, Alabama lost because of there used to be a formula you had to do to beat Alabama, which is that like you got to be able to pass the football with an elite quarterback. You have to have elite wide receivers. You have to have a go-go passing attack. And over the last several years, but specifically highlighted with this one, you don't need that anymore because Alabama is no longer, and again, there's only a few teams in the country that can do this, but Alabama is no longer head and shoulders the most dominant defense, like trenches team in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Like Michigan is probably better than them. Ohio State and Georgia match up well. Texas bulldozed them in their game this season. I mean,
and by doing it between the trenches, in the trenches.
It's like it used to be that like that was the thing. The way you beat Alabama is you avoid their like great wall on their defensive line, and you are able to like force them into situations where their dominant run blocking offensive line doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't need. That's not the formula you have to beat Alabama right now in its current makeup. And that's a huge change for the way that we perceive the sport of college football. And like to your credit, I want to give it's credit to Nick Saban that we're having this conversation, that a semifinal loss is like, and in the way that it happened is like, oh man, we were going to have a conversation about it now. But it's one of those things like it is
which we texted about at halftime. Legitimately did.
With like this, it is such like, despite the fact that he I've lost my train of thought. No, but despite all of this, like this is one of Nick Saban's I think best coaching jobs this season. We talked about but he is manufacturing. They almost won this game.
He loves this. He loves the fact that they don't have the guys, that they don't have the Waddles or
they had no passing attack.
He loves this. He loves this.
And it's like there's some criticism of like that final play for Alabama in overtime, the 4th and goal, the power run. I really don't have that much of a problem with the play call because it's like that's the best thing that this offense does is that you run with Jalen Milroe. The issue is that their offensive line got blown up.
Yeah,
and Jalen Milroe
was a low snap.
Didn't take the right lane, and then the snap. That was, and sometimes the players don't make the plays, but it's just like I'm actually not really about criticizing that play call. It is a thing where I'm like they just don't have they're in an offense that their best play call is a QB power run on 4th and goal, but not from like the 1, from like the 4. And they got blown up, and that's one of those. It is not usually what we think about as Alabama. And credit to Michigan for that.
Absolutely. I just want to say that I don't believe Saban in the postgame presser when he said that was quarterback power. I think it was an RPO. If you look at it, it looks like an RPO. I think that he, in all of his, I am the greatest coach of all time, is still backing up his players after the season is over. You know what I mean? He's like, it's just how Saban is. And I just think it's another feather in his cap. Okay. Yeah.
It's crazy to me that one of the greatest stories of this season that underline is the fact that the Washington offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, turned down the Alabama job.
And we're seeing why. Which we'll get to in a second. I want to wrap up here on the Rose Bowl, Tyler. On the Michigan side of things, we talked a lot about Bama. We talked about Saban. But I do think that this was, I briefly mentioned it, but I think this was like a turning point in the whole Michigan reputation thing and the
I mean, it
Michigan
has to be.
can't win big games, all that stuff. Not only did they beat Bama, granted, I don't, this isn't the Bama that I think.
This is not like beating Tua Tagovailoa
No,
or
no, no,
Jalen
no.
Hurts or
No,
like any
no.
of those Bama teams. It's
Exactly,
not. It's just
exactly.
not. Like I didn't even
But,
throw Bryce Young's Bama teams in there, but
which
like
were really good. But I do think that it's a statement that Michigan went in, beat Bama at the stereotypical Bama style of play, and is really poised for the future with it, whether Jim Harbaugh decides to stay or not, because I think that they have a great infrastructure there. And their offensive coordinator, whose name is escaping me, but he's the one, Sherrone Moore, thank you. He's the one that filled in when Harbaugh missed 6 games this past
if
season.
I'm a Michigan fan, I'm feeling good because even if Jim Harbaugh leaves, like they just promote Sherrone Moore.
Yeah,
and
as they should.
He's shown now it's different being an interim than being the head, but
Correct.
like it's nice to know that you have a guy in the program that has done it and has done it well, and like over half their schedule they have played without their head coach, and so I'm feeling good if I'm a Michigan fan. I mean, obviously you're in the national championship, but
right, obviously. But do you think that the perception of Michigan has changed given the whole?
I think so.
Even given what happened this season with the reason that Harbaugh missed 6 games, and seems like every 2 months there's announcements of some kind of NCAA violations, which, full disclosure, I think are ridiculous because it's like
never
buying
cooperate.
Cruz cheeseburgers or whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
whatever it is, what like I don't care about that stuff. But what I do care about is the systematic sign stealing scandal that included videotapes and hundreds of thousands of dollars in tickets. And turns out that Connor, whatever his name is, was at the Rose Bowl, probably under his own paycheck and stuff, whatever. But like, it seems like they're taking this whole the world is against us, and it's like, no, the world's not against you. It's just like you got caught doing something wrong and you just don't want to admit it. So do you think the perception of Michigan has changed? Is this one of those winning cures all thing where we're not going to really remember this, or is this going to be like a gray cloud if Michigan is to win the national title? We'll remember it like, hey, remember that year Michigan won the title? Oh yeah, isn't that the one where they cheated? You know what I mean?
I mean, I could see in the future them being like Michigan is forced to vacate those titles, like which would
I don't know if I'd go that far.
I mean that's what I mean. NCAA is just like we want to flex our power because more and more often people have shown that they don't believe in us.
Because we don't.
Because we don't.
Sorry.
And like
I said that I didn't mean to say that out loud.
I feel like the penalties from this is a bigger conversation. I feel like in the next few years, penalties from the NCAA are going to start to become more severe because more and more, not only like the fans, but like programs are being like, we don't respect you or believe in you. And it's, it's kangaroo court. And I think their attempt to keep that in line, it should be to be less severe because, but I feel like they're going to try and have more severe penalties. I mean, I don't care. Vacated wins is always a stupid thing to me because I'm like, well, we watched the game happen, so like, I mean, we know what happened.
I can fire up YouTube and see what happened.
That doesn't give the other team a win. They still have a loss in that situation.
Right.
And the record books. I personally don't think it's going to be a cloud over Michigan. It would honestly, I think it would have been more of a cloud over Michigan if they had started losing after that came out. Like they have, there are the stats that like JJ McCarthy has not played as well since that sign stealing scandal became public. Like,
and JJ McCarthy didn't really play well until the end of the game when he needed to.
Yeah,
if we're being real here.
And it's funny that we talked about in our preview that you order the quarterbacks in these games as Michael Penix, Quinn Ewers, JJ McCarthy, Jalen Milroe, and it basically played out like that.
Kind of
played out exactly like that. And again, it's one of those things. What was it? Alex Kirshner said, I think tweeted that like Michael Penix made more big time throws in his semifinal game than Michigan has asked JJ McCarthy to make all season.
That's insane.
And that's one of those things where it's like, I don't know if he can do it or not, because in this game he showed he can do it. But anybody can do it for one drive, like
right. And we're not talking draft yet, but I think JJ McCarthy's coming back next year anyway, so we won't talk about it this offseason. But I do like, then you have throws that JJ McCarthy makes, like that Ohio State game throw at the line in the first quarter or whatever, which split 17 defenders for some reason and was a perfect throw. I don't know. So you get that, but then you also are like, hey man, maybe let's see a bit more of this. This is supposed to be this quarterback. But then also, if I was the offense coordinator,
I mean,
and
it's
I had
not
Blake Corum,
it's
I
not a
probably would
bad
just run
call
Blake
to it's not a bad call to give Blake Corum the ball.
Exactly.
I'm not criticizing that.
No.
Like it's I don't know. It's it's one of those things. You look at teams like Washington and even like Texas with Quinn Ewers. You're like, yeah, but like if you have that player, you call those passes for them because you have trust in them to do it. And Washington's kind of an outlier with how much they trust their players, but like. And it's like even Saban, it's just like if he has that player, he trusts them to go make those throws, and they don't really kind of do that with JJ McCarthy, so that makes me curious. But again, I can't. It's hard to criticize because they keep winning. But that's the thing. I think that Michigan, the cloud would be more of a thing because if Michigan started to lose after that came out, it'd be one of those things where like that was how they were winning. But now it's one of those things. Is like no, they won today because they were better.
Well, they've always had that incredible offensive and defensive line, and that was the centerpiece to their entire win streak or relevancy on top, you know?
So it's the thing. It's just like because of that, I don't really, and they have not done anything that's going to get them the death penalty, which I don't think will ever happen again.
No,
in sports.
I don't either.
Like, if it didn't happen to Baylor, it's not going to happen again. Like,
right.
And so to me, I really feel like we're going to forget about it in a few years.
Yeah.
Hell, we might forget about it by next offseason.
Listen, one thing I'm not going to forget about is Michael Penix Jr. and the year that he had. Should have won the Heisman, in my opinion. But I don't. We hate know the truth Daniels, here. But we know the truth.
Not just because I don't like Jaden Daniels' highlight tapes being used from his game against us.
430 yards on 29 completions and 2 touchdowns. That is an absurd thing to do, Michael Penix Jr. He did that en route to a 37-31 victory over Texas in the Sugar Bowl. This game was both of these games. While we talk about how good these games were, right? It was definitely one of the more exciting college football playoffs days that we've had since this started in 2014. But I do think that these games weren't the best games. They just kind of had the best endings. You know what I mean?
I agree. I think last year's games were better. I think in regards to like a full 4 hours of entertainment.
Right.
I think that the TCU Michigan game had a lot of points. Although Michigan never led, it was constantly like they're coming back. TCU and TCU, the way that TCU would score their points was very exciting and very random.
For those forgetting, TCU beat Michigan 51-45 in the Fiesta Bowl last year, and Georgia beat Ohio State 42-41 as that field goal missed quite literally at the exact same time the clock struck midnight on 2022. So remember that was a fun one.
So those I think were better. I will say it's really cool to have 2 college football semifinal games decided on the last play, literally.
Yes.
Because like I wouldn't say it's like I would not say that the Michigan TCU game was decided on the last play. Like I know that obviously the Ohio State Georgia game was, but both of these were literally decided on the very final play. There was not just like a shot, but like a realistic shot for the other team to keep going.
But even cooler, Tyler, is that the Georgia TCU game was decided by a field goal. I'm sorry, the Georgia Ohio State game was decided by a field goal. Georgia TCU was not decided by a field goal. And like you said, both these games on the last play, but like inside the 5, do or die football, like not like, a 30-yard chip shot or, oh my God, can he hit a 57-yard or whatever, which those are exciting as well. But there's something about 4th and goal from the 4, need to score to keep overtime going. And, ball at the 4, 1 second left on the clock, 1 play, no timeouts, run the play. You know what I mean? There's something exciting about that. So yes, while I agree with you, I just wanted to feel out how you felt about that because yes, I don't think that these games as a whole were better than last year's set of games.
I think it's the recency bias thing too. Is like in the moment. It's gotta be. And again, I do agree that they had better finishes other than that. I mean, I hated the way the Ohio State Georgia game finished, but I get it. Like, but which, by the way, that game is very like the performance CJ Stroud put on in that game is very similar to the performance that Michael Penix Jr. put on in this game of just like dominance. And And that's like going into the game analysis. It's just my take for this game is mostly at no point until the last 4 minutes did it really feel like Texas was going to win. Like, which is crazy to think.
Well, they
Texas
were down. They were
like,
down 2 scores with like 8 minutes left.
Yeah.
And even when they, kicked the field goal to, which was the right decision in terms of
correct
analytics.
decision.
Yes. That's another thing. I loved watching these 2 games when there were 3 instances when it was like, what should you do as a coach? And in all 3 instances, what happened on the field were things that I personally would have done. So starting off with the 4th down inside their own 30 at the end of the regulation of the Rose Bowl, when Harbaugh goes for it, gets it, and they end up going down and scoring to tie the game to then go to overtime. And then you had a situation in the Washington game where there was a tie game, I think in the 3rd quarter, and they go for it on 4th and short, and they get it as well. People were like, oh, I don't know what's happening, blah, blah. And then you had at the end of the game there, Texas kicking that field goal. These are like coaching decisions that, maybe not everyone would make, I guess is the polite way for me to say that. But very much unique situations where, hey, looks like these coaches are really these coaches are younger than Saban, that's for sure. But that
is not a hard thing to accomplish.
That is not hard to accomplish. No, but they're a bit more embracing of what the analytics are. We know Washington has the entire season. Like they are very much how we would play football, you and I, in that sense. But it was just nice to see that. Sorry, I cut you off, but it was just a very new thing about the playoff that I hope we get to see going forward.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of coaching decisions I really disagreed with in these games. Obviously, the one. I think the one with Washington and Dillon Johnson, I honestly personally think people are calling it a flawed decision or disagreeing with it simply because of what ended up happening. Mm-hmm. But like this is things like that's who Washington is. They're like run the ball with your star running back whom you trust to try to win the game. If you can take a play to try to win the game, do it. Because if you get tackled for 2 yards and you're down, they're forced to burn a punt. I don't think they even had a timeout at that point. Mm-hmm. Run some seconds off the clock, punt. But if not, if you get it, you win the game. Yeah. And the statistical likelihood that your star running back will get hurt on that play and cause an injury timeout is so unlikely. It's one of those things where you're only knocking this decision because of what ended up happening. And what ended up happening is you cannot account for that happening.
Correct.
And it's not like say leaving your starter and defensive lineman.
Don't do that to me.
In the 4th
don't do that to me. Don't do it. You know why don't do that to me? Because which one, Tyler? Which one? Take your pick. You want Jalen Phillips? You want Bradley Chubb? Which one? Which one you want to talk about?
I don't want to talk about. I was purely hypothetical.
My girlfriend asked me what did it take to win the fantasy championship, and I told her everything regarding the Miami Dolphins is what it took.
Anyway,
she didn't ask me that. I'm just being funny, but
anyway, no, but you don't expect that to happen. And I mean, Washington is, and I've said this for multiple weeks now, Washington is the extreme of the coaches trusting their players. Yeah. At every turn, Washington trusts all of their players to make the plays that they ask them to make, and even be better than they ask them to make. And that's to me, that's one of my favorite things to see in the team. Mm-hmm. It's revitalized Michael Penix Jr.'s career, but that's the thing. They don't even really have that great of a run game. I mean, Dillon Johnson has been really good for them. Mm-hmm. But they trust him, and I don't know.
And they trust guys like Michael Penix Jr. to know when to throw, know when to step in the pocket. I saw a tweet that was Michael Penix Jr. It was wow, he's so good at evading pocket pressure, and then it was Michael Penix Jr. at Indiana, and it was war clips of him just not him, but
that man has been through a lot.
They ran a thing about him on game day in the morning. I caught a little bit of game day before. I went to see the Iron Claw before these games. Took a little solo movie day by myself. Oh, nice. So good. Highly recommend it. Bring tissues. Really sad. But anyway, I was watching some game day before going to that, and they ran this package on Michael Penix Jr. And it's first he separated his non-throwing shoulder, then he separated his throwing shoulder, then he re-aggravated that injury, then he tore his ACL in his left knee, then he tore it in his right. It's this guy's made of glue.
What's
going on?
Well, Colin, I heard a stat today that's like Michael Penix Jr. has taken less sacks in his career than Caleb Williams has taken in this year.
Eesh.
It's just like he operates the pocket better than NFL players, like than some NFL quarterbacks. Like
Michael Penix Jr., you could drop him right now on 10, maybe 12 NFL teams, and he'd be their starter immediately.
He's basically tall Tua.
No, he's got more of an arm than Tua. Don't
Oh,
do
yeah,
that.
yeah.
He's got much like.
I prepared. People are gonna make that comparison because he's a lefty.
My dad and I were having dinner tonight before we recorded, and he went to bed early. And he was like, "Oh, how was the game?" And I was like, "Oh, it was so good, whatever." And he was like, "That Washington quarterback's got a cannon." I was like, "Yeah, man, he's got a cannon."
I don't know. He is he's the Death Star. Like, and somebody said this last year, and I quoted it as like, "It's really awesome that Washington's offense knows that like Michael Penix Jr. Yeah, he can make every throw, but like he excels at like bullet laser cannon throws, and it's just like we build as many of those as possible into the offense." Yes. Just like,
I mean, it also helps. It also helps when you have like NFL wide receivers and Roma Dunze,
and getting Jalen Polk back healthy for this game was really big. Sorry, I don't remember if it was him or Jaden McMillan, but they'd only been operating with 2 of their top 3 for most of the year, and him being back fully healthy, I mean, this is one of those games where it's kind of how you felt for like the Washington-Oregon game, the first one, where you watch it and you're just like, there's just not really a lot of worlds where Washington's not winning this game. And it's just their approach. They dominated the third quarter. Michael Penix Jr. was surgical in every aspect. A little later in the game, the Texas defense bowed up a little bit, and that they stopped letting them score touchdowns, started making field goals. But on the defensive side, Washington's defense is the epitome of bend don't break. And I saw somebody say this.
I'm sorry, Washington is the epitome of bend don't break, not just the defense, just Washington, the program.
I mean, I saw a Washington fan post. It's just like the epitome of this defense is they will never get a stop when you want them to, but they will always get a stop when you need them to.
Yeah,
and you saw that, and I don't want to talk just about Washington because it was like we believed, but I think a lot of people really thought that Texas was going to dominate the line of scrimmage, and they really didn't. Which is also didn't.
Washington, at least on offense, didn't need to win that battle. They needed to do just enough so that Michael Penix Jr. could find some space to make a throw. Because again, when you have 2, maybe 3 NFL wide receivers on your roster, them boys are going to get open. So it's just a matter of do enough so that they can get open and throw the ball. Well, you joked about Penix being tall Tua. That's kind of the philosophy of the Dolphins offense. Just get the ball out quick enough into space so that they can do their thing, you know?
And that's the thing is like they didn't need the rushing attack to do anything really from a production standpoint. Yeah. Like you just said. It's like, but they still kept running it like because it's just like because we need to establish the threat and we need to make sure that like they still think that we're gonna do it.
Dylan Johnson got 21 carries.
21 carries and only 49 yards.
Yep. Tybo Rogers got 5. Jeremy Bernard got 1, and Penix ran it 3 times. As a team, they ran 31 times for 102 yards.
For as pass happy of a team as they as much as we think of them as a pass attack, that's a lot.
Yeah,
that's a lot. Most teams run about 60 plays a game.
Penix dropped back 39 times, and they ran the ball 31.
That's a balanced attack.
It's like a 57-43, 60-40 split there.
Which, like, the wrinkle that they used this game is that they used Penix on the ground in certain spots, which was an interesting wrinkle that they threw in there. Because with all of his surgeries and
we haven't seen that as much.
We have not seen that, and they haven't needed it. But this is the game that you do that. Like,
right.
And
we would be hypocritical if we said credit to Washington for holding that till right now. And not saying credit to Michigan for holding off on the deep ball until now. So I want to just
that's a good point. That's a good point.
Because it is things that we probably think they should have been doing more, but ended up not. But like you said, we don't have to always talk about Washington. If you have anything else you want to say it now so we can move on to Texas. But
I mean, I was absolutely in love with the final play of the game with the Washington defender just being like, get that out of here.
Well, they ran the same play Texas did that Adonai, thank you. That Adonai Mitchell ran to score the touchdown in the third quarter, which, by the way, he is going to make some GM jump out of his seat.
There were a lot of there's not
there
that
were
many
some
wide receivers.
freak plays by the wide receivers in this game on both sides. Like, oh my gosh, these athletes
There were not that many wide receivers, and like, Roman Wilson is pretty good for Michigan, but he's going to be like a slot guy, and Alabama's wide receivers are fine. They're good college players. We'll see if they translate to the NFL. But this was a game where it's like, damn, they're NFL players all over the place.
Yeah, man. It's funny because the NFL players in the Rose Bowl were along the trenches, and the NFL players in the Sugar Bowl were on the outside. Like corners and wide receivers galore in this game. Adonai Mitchell, that touchdown that he caught, it was incredible.
He did a double jump.
You saw it, right? He jumped, realized, oh, I jumped early. I need to get a little bit higher. And when they showed the slow-mo replay, it just looks so cool. He jumps and then he does like a Michael Jordan, like extending every part of your body, just like it's in the air, does it again and ends up snagging the football. I was like, oh my God, it's one of the best catches I have ever seen in any level. It was insane. It was insane, Adonai Mitchell.
I think.
Oh man.
On that transition to the Texas side,
exactly.
I think it was just Texas has been great all season. I think that they just were not quite as good. The margin was really slow. It felt weird. I mean, it's the thing. It felt weird for them to almost be able to win the game in the last bit because, like, in the middle parts and early parts of the game, Quinn Ewers was playing fine. He wasn't playing as good as we know he has been able to. They kind of got away from the run game a little bit, and I think in the third quarter, turnovers were really the big thing. They had one or two. I think they had 2 fumbles that allowed Washington to get more than a 1-score lead. They got a 2-score lead, and that really set them back. And but I mean, Texas. It wasn't again. At no point in any of these games did I get the whole like this team doesn't belong that we'd grown like accustomed to in the playoff. Like it was very like Texas deserved to be here, and they came up just a little bit short. And they were in it while not playing their best game for most of the game.
Yes. But here's the thing. Just like Alabama, I think Texas and Alabama, I think these games for them were a microcosm of what their seasons looked like. With Alabama, it was always, this isn't the team that can win in the trenches like we were used to. And it turns out that they couldn't win in the trenches like they used to, and therefore are now no longer in the playoff. Were eliminated. With Texas, there was there was a point in almost every single Texas game this season where it was like, man, what's Quinn Ewers doing there? Where it was like, that's unlike him. And then there were always moments where one part of the team was having a mental lapse, right? They can never always be on the same page, right? You saw at the end of this game of the Sugar Bowl that when Texas is all on the same page with all that talent and the great play caller in Sarkisian and all this stuff that they've been building there in Austin, it works. And they're a good football team. They're just not always consistent. And that was the issue with Texas this season. They have just been more consistent than in years past. And because Sark is a good coach and because they've been building up this roster and they do have the depth now and they are quote unquote SEC ready, that yes, this is something that they are now improving and they can get to this point, but they went up against a team that we have for the entire season, Tyler, you and I have been saying, they just find ways to win a game. And when you give a team like that a few inches, they're going to take a whole yard. And that's what happened in this game. Washington ended up taking the whole yard. Texas took their foot off the gas in the third quarter. Washington floored it. And that was the difference in the game. And it was just a little too much for Texas to overcome. I think if there's 30 seconds more in this game, Texas might win this football game.
I honestly, that's the thing. Like, it's crazy to think they should have even had that chance, given that it all came from an injury timeout. But the fact that they did, it just kind of goes to show they just had a little bit more time. It's like they were rolling. And you texted me when it was happening. It's like, it's time to see if Quinn Ewers belongs on the stage. And within like 5 minutes, you were just like, he belongs on this stage. Because at the end of the game, he was completing some really awesome throws. And this is kind of where the experience comes in. Like Michael Penix Jr. he's a senior, and Quinn Ewers, I believe, is a junior. And
Yeah,
has
Michael
played- and
Penix
has
Jr.
played
went through
less.
his own Vietnam
Like,
over in Indiana.
yeah.
So that man is.
And that's the thing. Quinn Ewers has played less. It's not just about the years. Quinn Ewers has played less games, and Quinn Ewers was injured a bit this season. And Texas has a little bit of that this season, that they just find ways to win. In that, when Quinn Ewers was out, they were just doing it. But you're very right. Where like Washington always seems like they're on the same page, and everyone's like, there's always just a bit in a Texas game, especially with Quinn Ewers, where it's just a lot of like, I don't know what you're doing there, bud, and then you get back on track.
Can I ask you a question? And
Go
then
ahead.
we can talk about the Natty. So my question to you when I texted you, it's time, or when I said to you, it's time to see if Quinn Ewers is made for the moment, and then I immediately followed up with, yes, he is. I think I want to walk that back a little bit. I think that he is as talented, and I think he is one of the 5, definitely 10, maybe 5 best quarterbacks in college football. I just don't know. And I think I want to preface this by saying, obviously mental health is a very big thing, and we take it very seriously and all these things, but there is a mental aspect of the game. And me challenging Quinn Ewers in terms of his mental toughness here is not that I don't believe him to be a mentally tough person. It's that I think that he is a 20-year-old who has had the limelight on him since he was 16 years old, was one of the craziest the literal first beneficiary of NIL, if you remember correctly, forgave his senior high school season to go to Ohio State a year younger to capitalize on that NIL, which good for him. But I think that there's been a lot of pressure and expectation on him. And the one thing that I think has gone very underrated and not talked about, Tyler, and it was encompassed by a picture I saw that was taken at the media days for the Sugar Bowl, where you had Quinn Ewers sitting on his little table, the starting quarterback of the University of Texas, leading this Texas team finally back, because I think it's unquestioned Texas is back.
Oh yeah, and like that's
those jokes are dead and gone. I know I tweeted that as a joke when they were struggling during the game in the third quarter, but I think Texas legitimately is back. And when I said the best Texas team in years, I was being serious. That was the best Texas team in years. Anyway, there's that picture of him waiting to talk about, and no one is near him. You know why, Tyler? Because everyone was surrounding Arch Manning. And the hype around Arch Manning coming back to New Orleans, where he's from, with his team, the first media availability of the year.
Didn't take a snap in this game.
And they showed him multiple times on the broadcast and talked about him. I wonder how much of that is on Quinn Ewers' shoulder and in his head when he's having those moments in these games where it's like, what's up with Quinn Ewers? Because I think he's a very good quarterback. And I think he's, like I said, top 10 for sure, maybe top 5 in college football players in the country. But how much of that has to do with that? And does that have an effect? And will that go away? Because I don't think Arch is transferring anytime soon. Quinn is coming back for another season. What happens here? There's a whole lot of conversations off the field. And I think this is where the whole Texas getting in their own way, I think this is where that storyline has gone to this season, because there's some things that Quinn Ewers, there were some throws even right before, in the fourth quarter, right before he launched that comeback, that there were some throws that were a little behind on the ground, not accurate. And I was like, that's not Quinn Ewers. He's a good quarterback. Like he's accurate. You know what I mean? So how much of that do you think played a factor? And that's just my theory, but do you think that may be something to monitor for Texas going forward?
I don't know if it's something to monitor. I mean, I will admit I hadn't thought about that, because it was one of those things where it's like, I know that from a media perspective, the Arch Manning thing is a cloud hanging over Texas, but I don't know if it is to the players. It hasn't seemed like it. Arch Manning has never really like threatened to transfer. Like, I want the field. Like,
oh, I want to clarify. I'm not saying that there's beef between these guys.
Oh,
or none of that stuff. I'm just from as someone who has had his mental health obstacles in the past, I wonder how Quinn Ewers is handling that, because that can't be easy to handle.
No, it can't. But I don't know. I didn't see that. I could see that being a part of it. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it's tough, because it's like, you know, when we also, you know, we watch the NFL, we evaluate the NFL, and it's very much like after the first few years, like you know what these players are. They all kind of are what they are. But in college, that's not the case. Like in college, every year people drastically get better. Michael Penix Jr. is like the case for that. So it's one of those things where like Quinn Ewers got like there is a chance that we're talking about him like Michael Penix Jr. like next year, because this is the period of time where players get drastically change how they are at different parts. You know, at a certain point you are what you are, but in college it often changes. I don't know. I mean, I think just Texas had a bit of an off night in certain areas.
But can it be an off night when they're having off moments like that in almost every game leading up to it, or is that who they are? At least
I do feel like that is. I do feel like this version of them, that is a bit who they are. And the thing is, that most of these games, they have been good enough to overcome that. And it was that weird thing where like they were dominant against Alabama, and the next week they were only up 3 against Wyoming in the third or fourth quarter, and then dominated to end the game.
I think the most complete game they played all season was Red River.
Yeah, and they lost that
really.
one. Like,
and they seriously. Well, again, we've established that game was whoever had the ball last was winning. But
yeah,
crazy to think. I don't know. There's a lot of questions with Texas in the offseason. Not all of them as existential and psychological as the one I posed, but
it feels very the way Alabama lost to me feels more existential than the way Texas lost. Honestly, like I look at this and I'm like, okay. If you don't, if Jaden Blue doesn't, when they're driving into the red zone, in the third quarter, if he doesn't fumble the ball by running into his own player, or maybe not having this conversation, because that was right before the dominant Washington run in the third quarter, like that. So, I mean, I see that, but there's a lot of aspects of, Sarkisian is one of those things where I think they kind of got away from the run game a little bit, which was really working.
Yeah.
And they had one or two more mistakes than Washington did. And I mean, that's the thing is Saban, the way Alabama lost is just so counter to what we expect from them, both on the trenches and from a quarterback wide receiver standpoint. Whereas for Texas, I was just like, you're real good. And you went up against another real good team that had a better quarterback than you and slightly better receivers. And on top of that, they were on tonight more than you guys were on. Yeah. And I don't know. I can see that, and I don't want to downplay it because again, I don't want to downplay anyone's mental health struggles,
of course,
or anything.
And by no means was I.
We're not implying that there is, but
it was something. It, honestly, and I'll try to find the picture and send it to you, Tyler, and I'll try to find the picture and tweet it out, listeners. From both the Sideline Judgement account.
Are you talking about from the press account? From the press?
I
saw the picture.
You see that picture, and I mean, it's hard for. I mean, you're a screenwriter. I'm an actor.
Yeah.
We see images are something that we maybe just by the nature of who we are overanalyze. But there's a reason that pictures are worth 1,000 words. And when I saw that picture, I was like, number one, whoever this photographer is, just
excellent storytelling.
What a shot! Pictures. Incredible shot. But I wondered. I went, because I think I came across it during the game. I was checking Twitter and I went, oh my God, that's. And I was in a state where I do my best thinking, Tyler. And I was like, interesting. That's something very interesting. Yeah. So
I can see that.
I'm curious to see how that goes. And again, we don't want to, mental health things. I don't know if he does or if he's open. If he does, I don't know if he's open about it. I don't know if he doesn't, whatever. By no ways are we implying that. I was just very interested, and I thought the picture was very expressive. And as an artist, I thought that was something that I can maybe try to deduce from. So
I mean, I definitely hear that, and I think it's part of a bigger conversation of that you always ask, can you win a national championship with this quarterback? It seems to be the way that the game is going now. Used to be it used to honestly be quarterback was not one of the most important parts in winning a national championship in college football. Now it really is. You got to have the guy who can make plays, and all of the 4 quarterbacks in this semifinal, in these semifinals in this playoff are great. Great college quarterbacks. And that's the thing where it's this is the question. If it's part of the question of can you win a national championship with Quinn Ewers? I think you can. I don't think you can. I don't think this game means by any means that you can.
Nothing in this game or even nothing this season showed me that no, you can't. You can't.
Yeah, I just think it was a night where Texas, like Washington, got off hot, and Washington hit all the small percentage plays that they needed to hit.
Mm-hmm.
Like they had all the tight window throws. They got the penalties when they needed to. Rome Odunze slowing down and getting tackled by the DB right as the ball gets there, he's tracking it. Tactical, beautiful decision to draw that pass interference. Like, and that's, you can't even argue it. Like that's like, but like they hit on all those things, and Texas only hit on some of them. And
listen, Tyler,
it's hard to beat anyone when they're playing perfect. Like,
absolutely, and it's hard to beat anyone when in the post game press conference you're hitting your marks just like Michael Penix Jr. is in the in the post game interviews. I thought you'd like that transition much more. I really did. You just kind of gave me a little small smile and nod. I thought you'd like that one more. I'll go back in the lab and try to work on it.
It's like when yours is just like you're just not quite there yet. You know,
listen,
like,
I'll let a naysayer know. Okay, I'll let a naysayer know.
You watched that video,
bro? Yo, Dez and what's his name? He does
I know what you're talking about.
He does the college football tonight cast. What's his Joey Galloway? There we go. Joey Galloway.
Yeah.
Joey Galloway and Desmond Howard were like if you haven't seen it, go watch the game day clip. Reese Davis says that the Washington team has the Alabama team has a saying within them, and it's let a naysayer know. But if you are a member of the African American community,
probably
you would know that the word that replaces naysayer is one that Tyler and I will not be ever saying.
No,
on or off the air, just not something we do. And it is quite amusing to see Desmond Howard and Joey Galloway, who both happen to be Black, their reaction to what was going on. And this was one of the rare moments where I was so happy to have Pat McAfee there, because he really did diffuse the situation and was like, whoa, hey, yo. But I say that because Michael Penix Jr. in the post-game interview kind of summed up what the rest of his teammates were saying, where it was like, hey, no one's believing in us. You know, like, we're this team out there. No one cares about us. No one's believing in us. Like, it's not who people want to see win the title, but we've been saying it all season, and I'm just so happy to say it. I'm so happy to see it, because I've been saying the whole season, apart from that stretch where I thought it was Oregon for like about a month and a half. But other than that, I was like, hey man, Washington is the best team in the country. I was saying from the beginning, Washington's the one seed. And on the field, they looked like it last night. So it was really, really nice to see. Really nice to see Michael Penix Jr. literally saying, free Julio, free all the homies. I don't know who's locked up in his crew or anything, but I love to see it.
Shout out Tampa. That's what he said.
He did. He's a Tampa boy.
He's from Tampa Bay.
Maybe we'll give him an honorary.
There's a team down there that would really love him.
Hey, listen, cannon of an arm. They got some wide receivers who could benefit.
They had a success with a vertical passing attack with Tom Brady.
They've had in the past with who?
Tom Brady.
Never heard of him. What I have heard of, Tyler, is the national championship game.
Quarterback ever.
What I have heard of is the national championship game. That is between the Michigan Wolverines and the Washington Huskies. Monday, January 9th. What? November? What's wrong with me?
For the Monday, first, I believe
November.
Go ahead.
No, just saying it's going to be at 7:30 Eastern. So make sure you guys adjust your times on that.
I believe for the first time since the first year of the college football playoff, we will have no SEC team will be a participant in.
Oh, well, would you look at this? I have it up. SEC. Since the first year, since 2014. But Tyler, you know why though? It's the holiday season. It just means more to be with your family in the holidays. So why would you have these players go out there and play football? Be away from them. Come on, Tyler.
Everybody knows the second week of the new year. That's the most special
exactly. Time. That's what we want to do.
It's a very short turnaround for them.
I'll make it simple. Who do you got and why?
All right. This is actually it's tough because like it's a short turnaround, which actually it's one of those things where not too much can change. Big part of it. Dylan Johnson, the Washington running back, and their star Washington running back, is expected to play in this game. His X-rays came back negative. Offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb said today that he is expected to play in this game. That's really big for them. Because because here's what we know from them. Even if like the run game doesn't get them anything, they're going to stick to it in order to open up the play action passing attack. And Michael Penix Jr. is surgical with that. So it's very important that they continue to hand the ball off to run. And they're not a big running back by committee team. Dylan Johnson is their workhorse running back. And so having him in this game at whatever capacity he's going to be, it's going to be important. He probably won't bust any huge runs against Michigan, but we'll see. We'll see. I think the key for this game is that these teams are just going to have to lean into who they're going to be. Washington, in my opinion, is better against the pass than they are against the run in a lot of ways, in that they have better edge rushers than most teams, but they're not as stout at the middle, which is why I think it was a mistake for Texas to go away from the rushing attack. Braylon Trice specifically, they have a really good pass rush. With that, Michigan dominant on running the ball. And for Michigan to win, I think that it's funny. For Michigan to win, they're going to want J.J. McCarthy to not have to do anything. And they're going to want to be able to just run the ball. Washington is going to probably stick to having a dynamite passing attack. And this is the hardest thing, because typically what we try to do in preview is like, where is the personnel advantages? Where are the tactical advantages? The tough thing with Washington all the time is that when I try to preview games for them, and I've said this all season, you can do whatever you want and preview whatever you want about how a team may have a personnel or tactical advantage over Washington, and none of it matters if you have the most elite passing attack in the country and you hit on it like they do, which is the thing with Texas. None of that matters if you are hitting on the 1% throws. And if you're unable to bring Michael Penix Jr. down in the pocket, if you're unable to cover Rome Odunze, if he's catching and they are catching those 1%, if Jalen Polk, after a great play by defensive back from Texas, knocks the ball out and he still catches it on the second bounce, nothing beats that. That's a perfect play. And now, how often are they? And the question is, how often is Washington going to be able to rely on their perfect passing attack? Because there's been games this season where Michael Penix Jr. has not been on, and they've still won just because of the other aspects of the team, because of his game management. And that's what is so hard, because I think from a defensive level, I heard this today, Michigan is set up to beat the type of offense that Washington runs, because Jim Harbaugh brought in his defensive coordinator to run this system to beat what Ohio State was at the time, which is this passing attack, which was a dominant wide receiving core and a quarterback that can really make any throw.
And we saw earlier this year, this Michigan team keep what we all agree is the best wide receiver in college football in Marvin Harrison Jr. They kept him in check. They did a really good job in that game of keeping him in check. Now, granted, that Ohio State wide receiver room was Marvin Harrison Jr. and then everyone else, because injuries, talent, depth, all that stuff.
And
whereas
Calvin Cord is not nearly as good as Michael Penix Jr.
Exactly. But, and honestly, Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan, I think those three guys are more in the category of being compared with Marvin Harrison Jr., each of them, than matching up wide receiver 1 versus wide receiver 1. You know what I mean? Than the depth chart, They have 3 number 1 receivers at their disposal any play.
But that's the thing, is that the key to the game is really, and this is the premier matchup to me. The key to the game in a lot of ways is Michael Penix Jr.'s pocket management, because Washington's offensive line won the Joe Moore Award. And there was a lot of people who were saying but that's not going to matter when they go up against that down south Texas D line. That SEC football. Yeah, those 2 high round defensive tackles, and they kept him mostly in check. And not in the run game, but in the pass game, they gave him enough. And Michael Penix Jr.'s pocket management gave him enough. And he had the time and he had the cannon to make the throws. And that's really going to be the main reason they were able to have such a success against Alabama, is on top of overwhelming their offensive line. Like I talked about earlier, Jalen Milroe was not diagnosing where the blitz was coming from. He wasn't throwing hot. He wasn't getting the ball out, and their blitzes were getting home. Mm-hmm. And Michael Penix Jr. is it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. You can't not blitz him. You can't do that. He will pick you apart.
Yeah.
But
when you blitz, you take some guys out from the second and third levels, and these wide receivers are good enough and fast enough to get open.
Honestly, it's one of the things. I wonder if they're going to do either like the Brian Flores style or like what Arizona did to Washington earlier this season, which Arizona's when they played Washington, they held them to like a 12-9 game that Washington had to get a pick 6 to win. But part of it was that they dropped 8 or 9 like every play. And they're like, we will not get beat deep. Yeah. And Michigan's defense is good enough tacklers to make that matter. Now, when you do that, you run the risk of Dylan Johnson breaking from holes. But I don't know. I mean, I think that's the defense versus offense. This is what you want. If you want the best defense in the country going up against the best passing attack in the country. That's what I'm here to see. Like,
yeah, styles make matchups. Michigan's running the football is going to go up against Washington's more passing. I don't want to say passing heavy, but like definitely pass first offense rather than run first.
I think one of the kind of switching to the other side as well. To me, the biggest thing to watch in this game is Jim Harbaugh going to go back to running trick plays that don't seem to work. Because
if Kalen DeBoer decides to run a double flea flicker with 8 minutes left up double digits to then piss off like he did to piss off Michigan's defense, just like he did against Texas's defense. Yeah, maybe he might, dude. He might.
That's honestly because like we talked about when Michigan just lined up and played football, like they were dominating against Alabama, but they kept trying to do these trick plays, and some of them worked. That was what doomed them against TCU. They kept trying trick plays, and they almost never worked.
Yeah, they got too cute.
And
which I don't know about you, Tyler, but are those trick plays? Is that bringing the Big Ten to the Big 12? I can't remember. Is that how that's supposed to work?
Something like that. Mm-hmm. And Washington is also no like stranger to trick plays, both as a program and as this year is like creative play design, things like that we haven't seen. And I know Kalen DeBoer and Rand Grubb always put a wrinkle into their game plan of something we haven't seen. And this past game, it was the Michael Penix designed routes, which Texas was not prepared for because they never do that. And what is it going to be this time? Whereas in Michigan, it's one of those things like, can you just have the discipline to be who you are on offense? Like, because in the Alabama game, and Jim Harbaugh continues to do this in bowl games, is this thing where like you just get away from who you've been all season, and maybe winning that game and showing that when winning the game in the Rose Bowl, maybe that's what they needed, and maybe the lack of prep, the only 7 days as opposed to the usual like 10 or 12 that you get, like maybe that's going to make a difference. This is a really tough game to predict because everything within me is telling me, okay, as good as Washington is, like Michigan is the best team in the country right now in regards to like roster development. Their defense is specifically designed to take apart this passing attack. And their offense can do enough. And they got All-Americans. They can dominate on the trenches. But then you look at Washington and you're like, yeah, but you are just the best at this thing. Like, and I don't want to switch it up now. I'm going to ride with the boys that I've been riding with all season. I'm going with the Huskies.
I think that you said the schematic things better than I could. And I completely agree with you in terms of those matchups. I also think from just the like a vibes perspective, I guess, for lack of a better word, Michigan celebrated that Rose Bowl like they won the Natty. Washington celebrated the Sugar Bowl like we got one more, you know? And this is one of those.
Said that.
Yeah, and JJ McCarthy
post game. They said
JJ McCarthy said it in the post game too. I get it, but it was very much like Michigan was like, "Oh my God, finally we did it. We got the monkey off our back." Not that I don't know because I think they're a good team and obviously at this level, but I'm not so sure that. I still think that people are overlooking Washington. I
agree. And I get worried when Michigan goes up against a team that they overlook because they clearly overlooked TCU last year.
According to Hard Rock Sportsbook, which is the one I use here in Florida, obviously, but Washington is currently a 4.5 point underdog. So it's plus 4.5 and money line straight up. They are plus 160. Now, Michigan is minus 195 money line and obviously minus 4.5, but so it's not a crazy difference, but like even betting is like, we're not so sure that, you know what I mean? Like seems like the money is telling us that there's a lot more respect on Washington than there is in the neutral eyes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a friend of mine who told me that his dad, who, you know, obviously doesn't watch college football the way we do, but I've had conversations with him and he's like, oh, fill me in on this, fill me in on that. And great guy. He told his dad was like, who's in the playoffs? And he told him Washington. And he's like, Washington? What do you mean Washington? Like they're not football like that. And it's just, that's just how a casual person who doesn't watch the sport like we do, you know, is very much like, oh no, that's not a team, whatever. Meanwhile, they have been the best team all season. They have the best offense in the country. They have 5, maybe 6 NFL players on that offense right now, between maybe a lineman or 2 and their receivers and Penix. Like, it's a good football team. Like, I think they're being overlooked a lot. I'm kicking myself in the butt for not taking Washington to win the Natty at plus 900 when they announced the playoffs. I was thinking about it and I didn't take it, and I'm kicking myself in the foot. But I won't make that mistake with them at plus 160 money line. So I am taking Washington as well. I think they're being overlooked. I don't know, man. It's
Look at it.
Bend not break, you know. And listen, I understand that was part of my argument of saying, hey, TCU might make this a game in last year's Natty, and then they went out there and it was an embarrassment. So I understand
I do not feel like
maybe
that will happen in this game.
I think these are 2 different teams. We talked a lot about how TCU knew how to win 1-score games and all of this last year. This is different. Washington's clutch.
Washington is clutch, and they're 8-0 in 1-score games this year, which is not how a national champion typically looks.
Tyler, they're 14-0 in all games this year.
That's true. We're going to have an undefeated champion this year.
We will have an undefeated champion.
Yeah, I mean, another thing. I mean, just looking at the stat comparison, like Robo Dunze has double the receiving yards. Robo Dunze is Washington's leading receiver, has double the receiving yards of Michigan's leading receiver, at Roman Wilson, who only has 735. Robo Dunze has 1,553.
I think the correct assessment there would be comparing Roma Dunze with Blake Corum in terms of efficiency and offensive snap percentage. And this is where I get into the nerdy stats.
Blake Corum has 25 touchdowns.
It was a record. It's a Michigan school record. Yeah, it's wild.
I mean, it's
in 14 games. That's insane. All right. Well,
the thing that you got to think about here is that, like, is this? I heard somebody say this. That Michael Penix Jr. performance, like, is this the Joe Burrow playoff year for him? And they're like, is that, like, you have NFL wide receivers, you have the most elite passing attack in the country, and you're just picking them apart. And it's one of those things where it's like, there's an inevitability to Washington's passing attack that if this is a close game, I'm gonna ride with Washington.
I want to just clarify it. I don't think it's 100% the Joe Burrow situation, because given Penix's age and his injury history, I don't think he's going to shoot to 1 overall in the draft. But
no. I'm not talking about from that perspective.
I do think he has a chance. I think he already turned himself into from a day 3 pick to a day 2 pick. Now I think he has a chance to turn himself from a day 2 pick into a day 1 pick.
And the reality with the draft is that, like, they are going to be teams that pass on him simply because of his medicals. Like, that's
Lamar Jackson was taken at the end of the first round. Not by us in our mocks. We've been told you guys that year. We told you guys that year.
You don't got to tell me about how great Lamar Jackson is.
Well, listen, I don't have to tell you, but I can, because I'm finally in the club. All right, I have arrived.
Your name's going to be on the trophy, buddy.
My name will be on the nameplate on that trophy. Enough fantasy football talk. Tyler, I agree with you. I'm going with Washington as well. Is there anything else you want to say about the semis or the Natty before we sign off and we rejoin with a national champion?
I'm actually really happy that there's no SEC team in this, just because, like, I like a change of pace.
I am too, but because I want my national championship and I want my playoffs to be representative of what happened in this season, and I don't think having an SEC team
was down this year.
I don't think one of the 2 best teams in the country was in the SEC this year. I think these are the 2 best teams in the country this year.
I keep seeing tweets about, like, how much Georgia would be favored over both of these teams, and to that I say, if they wanted to face either of them, maybe they should have won the most important game of their schedule. I don't know, just me. But
then, Tyler, then the games would have to matter.
Yeah, we can't do that. Clearly,
do that.
we must dictate the sport based off Vegas odds.
Of course, absolutely.
No, I mean, I think what's interesting to me about this, I will say, and I don't think this is a part of it because, but I just want to put it out there. Like, is the whole Jim Harbaugh leaving eventually going to be like a little bit of a thing that, like a big part of how Clemson won their second national title with Trevor Lawrence, so their third overall, but second in this era, was because of. It was, I heard somebody, I think Stephen Godfrey said, like, oh, people are like, oh, 6 times out of 10 or 7 times out of 10, Alabama wins that game. They just did that. He was like, 10 times out of 10, when Alabama plays that game on that day, they win that. Clemson wins. Because everything was going on with Alabama's offseason, with like all of their coaching staff and everything like that. And I don't feel like it will be the same, but I wanted to posit it as just a food for thought. Like, Kalen DeBoer and all of that seem nothing more than focused on this particular game, and I'm sure Jim Harbaugh is too, because like I don't get that sense from Michigan's program, but they've been the one with the offseason scandal. They with the big scandal. They've been the one with the weird stuff. They're the one with the coach that's got rumors for the NFL gig every year, and it seems like he's going to the Chargers this year. Apparently, that's the
listen.
So,
you can have your.
I'm just like, it might be. Hey, if there's something to think about, is like you're trying to find the edges here. And like that's an edge. I don't really believe that that's going to be a factor, but
no, but I hear you. Listen, you can have your flirting with the NFL every single year head coach. Give me the 3-time NAIA national champion at Wisconsin Whitewater.
He's been here. He's been to this game.
All right. Wait, I said this, and this we'll wrap up with this. But I said this take in our fantasy football chat. Which did you know I won the league this year, Tyler? Were you aware of that?
I somehow after an hour and 15 minutes of listening to this, I missed that.
That's crazy. No way. Well, I won the league this year, just so you know. In that chat, I mentioned during the game, I was like, Wisconsin, Washington is college football's like team.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
The college, like just given everything that's going on. Again, I love storytelling in college football. I think it's fantastic how, they're a West Coast team. They're overlooked, the underdog. Everything was SEC, Big Ten. And yes, granted, they're going to be in the Big Ten next year, but they were overlooked at first and all of these different things. But it's one of those things where it's just nice to see, and I'm very happy that a coach like Kalen DeBoer, who is like a college football fans coach, not that Jim Harbaugh isn't. Jim Harbaugh's fantastic college resume, FCS school at one point, Stanford. It's hard to win at Stanford, different things like that, of course. But I don't know. It's just in this moment, given the whole season Michigan's had with the scandals, with the lack of accountability, the lack of just admitting things. And it's woe. It's funny because it's like, woe against me. The world is against us. But like, that's like actually what's happening with Washington, and every conference that isn't the SEC Big Ten, and every school west of the Mississippi, like
it feels like that would be the best story. But
exactly.
what I will say, we are kind of spoiled this year because to me, it was like of the 4 teams we got, it was like, it was going to be a great story regardless. In a way, because it was like Texas. If Texas had won it, it'd have been like they're back. They finally climbed the mountain. Like they're back after almost 20 years from being gone. Alabama would only have been interesting from the like, wow, this is one of Saban's best coaching jobs, which is not interesting enough for me. But with Washington and Michigan, even still, you're looking at 2 programs that have not won a national championship since the 90s.
Yeah,
like we are getting a new entrance to the modern era champion. Like in the national the teams that can win a national championship in the modern era, these 2 have not been able to do it for the last in the college football playoff era. And finally, one of them will. Like, I don't know. I no matter the result, I think that's comforting to me. I mean, I think it'd be a greater story with Washington, but it's still kind of cool if Michigan finally is able to get here. But also, if you follow their trajectory, they only go incrementally, so they'll probably win it next year.
I literally wrote my thesis on the history of the college football, how to crown a college football champion. And I'm looking, I couldn't remember, but I'm trying to see, to build on your point. Quick scan here. Okay. Tyler, can you tell me when the last time a school west of the Mississippi, I shouldn't say that. The last time a school in the Western time zone, in your time zone, Tyler, a Big Ten time zone, if you will, won the national championship?
2004, correct, with USC?
Correct. Can you Tell me who it was before that.
Well, it's USC the previous year, right? Because they won
Well,
back-to-back.
they shared it with LSU, quote unquote. It was
Right.
But the BCS game was LSU. Exactly.
Okay. In that case,
not counting the shares.
Prior to that, it probably was Washington in like the 95.
No, 95 was Nebraska. But you were right. Washington in 91 when they shared it with Miami. Because that was when they legit shared it, not like had the BCS played the game and still said they shared it. Legit shared it. So pretty crazy. Wow. And Michigan last won their title in 97, also a shared title with Nebraska. So both of these teams looking to win their first outright title since the 90s, and Michigan hasn't won a title since, oh my gosh, Michigan. I'm scrolling. When's the last time Michigan won a Natty? Outright. 1948, Tyler.
Was that the last outright one?
Outright national championship for Michigan. And to be honest, just double check here. Yeah, dude. It's the last time they won a champion. They've won 2 national titles since World War II. One of them was shared in 97 with Nebraska, and the other one was in 48.
Oh, boy. Well, then this would be historic.
This would be historic. I know, right? Crazy. But that's just what we got going on here with college football playoff.
The final national championship of the 4-team playoff era.
I am very excited for the 12-teamer next year, but I'm also very glad that we got these games this year. Should have been Florida State in there. Not going to lie to you. Should have been Florida State. But consolation prize, I'm glad with what we got. You know what I mean?
Me too.
Game-wise, so. Alrighty, Tyler. I think that's going to be it for us. We will be back next week reviewing this Natty. We will be talking about it, kind of giving some of our thoughts as for the season as a whole. Won't go too in-depth. And then the week after that, Tyler, pending our professional work schedules, I think we need to rip the Band-Aid off and talk about the Florida Gators.
Oh, I'm ready, buddy.
I think we need to deep dive. We have both gone back with our respective families for the holidays. We've listened to what our friends think. Recruiting classes have been signed. Coaches have been hired. It's time to have a full-fledged conversation.
Hey, maybe if we wait another 2 weeks, maybe it'll finally give Billy Napier time to hire an offensive coordinator.
Hold on one second. Sorry, for a sec. I'm sorry. I thought Day was hosting this podcast with me for a second. What did you say, Tyler? That was so out of character.
I don't feel like it is for me. I've been calling for an offensive coordinator hire for months.
I believe you. Listen. I will give you my thoughts on Billy Napier, my full, current, up-to-date, unfiltered thoughts on Billy Napier in 2 weeks when we have that episode. How about that, Tyler?
I can't wait. I can't wait to see how and if it changes.
How about that?
I'm excited.
All right, Tyler, this has been another episode of Sideline Judgement. My name is Sergio.
My name is Tyler.
And we are not biased, Tyler, but this week, go Huskies.
Go Huskies.